So let's just kick it off. What do you think, Chelsea, of cypherpunk? Given, for example, the current geopolitical context, new U.S. election, anarchism, so forth and so on.
Sure. So the cypherpunk ethos, obviously comes from essentially the 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s. And it was very prescient in terms of its relevance and its importance for digital privacy and digital activism and digital the protection of people's individual information, not just like state actors and large corporations like banks. And I think that universalizing privacy has been a very important ethos in the context of more geopolitical instability in the sort of the post-COVID environment in particular. So I think that the ethos is more relevant than it has ever been. I certainly have always adhered to a lot of the sort of the late 90s and early 2000s ethos of digital privacy being and sort of libertarian early Silicon Valley sort of theories on this. I've sort of evolved a little bit, like on my personal stances, a little bit. I'm like perhaps a little bit more flexible on a lot of these ideas, but the underlying principles I think remain the same. I definitely would consider myself as having. I am certainly in alignment with anti-authoritarian, anti-surveillance, and pro-privacy, things, which I think is in alignment with cypherpunk. I think it's in alignment with some anarchist and libertarian principles. I don't know whether or not I fall under those labels necessarily, because I think I'm just sort of in alignment with it. But yeah, I think that these ideas and these principles are certainly more relevant than they've ever been. Even though I think that it's also an exhausting time, and I think that the digital landscape is going to be an increasingly diffracted and diffused and disconnected one.
Yeah, so I'd like to just add one or two words. So I consider myself a crypto anarchist. And I've been very disappointed in the blockchain community over the last few months. We do understand that everyone's bags are pumping. That makes everyone feel really happy and warm inside, knowing that they're making a bit of cash, digital cash, that is. But the fact of the matter is we've seen, and I really appreciate Vitalik's points on this, but regardless, we've seen person after person bend the knee to Trump and support the growth of authoritarian nationalism and populism throughout the world. And I would just say that's the least fucking cypherpunk thing ever, right? It's completely absurd. I'm not gonna go fucking suck the cock of Donald Trump just so my bags pump. Fuck that. Like literally, he is for, the whole anarchist ethos is against borders. It's about being who you are, disclosing who you are, working with others, regardless of where you happen to be born. The entire point of being anonymous is that you can contribute without attaching it to your identity. And these are like the fundamental core principles of the cypherpunk ethos. And the anarchist principles go back even further. At the dawn of the Industrial Revolution in 1863, Pierre Proudhon, the famous French anarchist, enemy of Marx and father of both left-wing and kind of anarcho-mutualism and anarcho-capitalism, imagined a society in the 1800s where we would progressively decentralize power to collectives, to individuals via voluntary association, via contracts, via mutual aid and solidarity. They even tried to put together interest-free banks to enable ordinary people workers and peasants in the very beginning of the Industrial Revolution to empower themselves. And I think this is the exact opposite of what we're seeing with the rise of authoritarian nationalism, racism, and all this other bullshit that everyone's currently endorsing just because it's making their bags pump. So I do want people to remember that. As an anarchist, we should be against all forms of domination, exploitation, and in particular, state power. Now, we may disagree about what comes afterwards. It's reasonable. No one has any fucking clue. But we shouldn't just team up with an authoritarian. That's like literally how Hitler happened. Okay, so next question. What do you think, Chelsea, about Ethereum? I don't know if I can't remember you even talking about it.
Yeah, so I obviously, I'm obviously familiar with Ethereum. I don't really use, I don't really use cryptocurrency myself personally, but I'm familiar with the Ethereum blockchain, and I played around with it back in, I think 2017. I set up a wallet. I played around with it. I looked at the underlying code and et cetera. I liked the idea. I liked the concept of Ethereum. I think that my views on it are, from a technical perspective, are that, you know, it's some of the ERCs are a little bit messy, and I feel like it's a bit while I think that it was a very good concept initially, and it was a good attempt, I think that Ethereum has sort of become a jack of all trades and a master of none. And it's sort of it's become this glob of code that's sort of messy and a lot, you know, basically, like, I understand the concept of like being able to like put like some unstructured ideas and concepts structures of data into and attach them to a blockchain. Like we've seen this with ERC20, we've seen this with ERC 721, we've seen this with a number of different ERCs. Where you've sort of like come with these different things, but I think computationally and in terms of like structure, and in terms of like what Ethereum has become, I'm a little less interested and a little bit more sort of disappointed in sort of like how, like, the direction that it went down. But I think it was a great experiment. I think Ethereum, and it's still an ongoing experiment. I'm perhaps a little less excited about Ethereum than I was whenever I initially came across it. I think in 2016, 2017.
Uh-oh, I think she just froze.
No, I didn't freeze.
Oh, you're still there. Your video froze, but your voice is there. I mean, do you use Ethereum at all? And if so, or if not, why not?
I haven't used Ethereum since 2021. So I haven't really engaged with, because of Safe Harbor, I haven't really engaged with any cryptocurrency since 2021, I would say, like 2021, 2022.
Okay, well, your video's here, but we can still hear you, so that's great. So yeah, I would want to say, just quickly, so myself and Chelsea and Max and Yana and many other people in this room, we work at an organization called NIM, like Anonymous, if you don't want to know where the name comes from. And we've been working for the last few years on building a mixnet. And a mixnet is a piece of software, I think probably discussed more in the afternoon with Vitalik, where the packets are mixed together before being sent out. So not a mixer, which mixes cryptocurrency and sends cryptocurrency out in an anonymized fashion, but something like that on the level of packets. And the reason why that's important is because all of these peer-to-peer systems, by nature, dox their users. They reveal their user's identity. They reveal the IP address, and not just the IP address, but the metadata, the timing and the volume information, which can be used with very simple AI, otherwise known as machine learning algorithms, to figure out exactly who you're talking to, what your transactions, or what's going on with your transactions. That's very dangerous. It not only enables MEV, but it's the sort of thing that enables the US government to put the Tornado Cash devs in jail, right? It's a really, really dangerous, the fundamental lower level network protocols, not just in Ethereum, but in Bitcoin and almost all blockchain protocols are fundamentally broken. And then on top, you can add various zero-knowledge proofs, and I'm sure there'll be many discussions of that, homomorphic encryption, or whatever you want to do to disguise the actual transactions on the chain level. But if you don't protect the network level, you can get, censorship. This whole issue with inclusion list that Ethereum's been having. Max over there worked with ChainSafe, and we got him working with Ethereum validators, and no one seemed interested. And we're really wondering, myself personally, and we've reached out to Ethereum Foundation multiple times. We've, reached out kind of continually. Why isn't there more interest in making Ethereum actually something which enables privacy and enables privacy both on the network level and on the transaction level? So these kind of alternatives to the nation state that we're building on Ethereum, or whatever other chain you wish, can actually work and not just create a surveillance nightmare, right? The whole thing with surveillance is that it existed far before blockchains, right? So the NSA can just look at all your transactions and copy them down. They can make their own little private database. But blockchains basically let anyone be the NSA. So you really have to take privacy pretty seriously. So I'm very happy to see everyone here today, and I would like to, and I would like to kind of like just talk to everyone afterwards about what they're interested in and how we can actually enable privacy to make Ethereum cypherpunk again, because obviously it was left out in the original design. So the last question I have for you, Chelsea, is why is making privacy-enhancing technologies hard? What makes
making
it
privacy
difficult?
Making privacy tech is very hard because you have this asymmetry between actors who have immense money, they have immense time, they have immense numbers of people working for them who are in opposition to the individual, right? So you have at the individual level, you have you're trying to have privacy, but you have these attempts basically since the 1930s by state actors to break encryption, obviously for other state actors, but since the advent of the internet, now and allowing individual users to browse the quote unquote World Wide Web starting in the 90s after Tim Berners-Lee, there's been an effort by state actors to be able to surveil these and by corporations to be able to collect and surveil this kind of data. And so you essentially have this arms race between the computational capabilities of the largest and most powerful institutions and organizations in the world, with an enormous amount of physical effort and brain power behind this, versus the individual who is just trying to get by very often with varying degrees of access to computational power, to software, to hardware, to tool and the tools and the know-how, the knowledge base to be able to be and engage in privacy. And obviously we've made an attempt over the last 15 years to make tools to where the individual can be more empowered. But these tools obviously have limitations and are up against the most powerful state actors, state and corporate actors in the world.
So I just like to tell.
So it's hard. It's hard because of the amount of money and power that is invested in breaking these things.
So I just like to tell a little story about how hard it is and what the kinds of repercussions are. So back in 2011, there was there was an era of uprisings in the Middle East, and one country where there was a series of uprisings was Syria. I had a good friend, happened to know him from Mozilla, Basil Safadi, and he was just a programmer. He built like 3D models for archaeologists, did like random things for Mozilla, web kind of front-end JavaScript development, and then all of a sudden his nation state went up in protest and started collapsing around him. And he wasn't a security guy, he wasn't a privacy person, he was just a normal programmer, and all of a sudden he found himself deeply engaged in a fundamentally revolutionary social process. And then what happened is, as that movement got bigger and the government of Syria started falling apart, there started to be more and more repression. And it became clear that the local telephone company, SyriaTel, was monitoring everyone's kind of traffic, and using that to track down and arrest protesters. So he approached me, he says, hey, I need a VPN. Can you, and I was volunteering at an anarchist VPN kind of security collective. I said, sure, like, we have tons of VPN access points. Here, take as many as you need. We gave him hundreds. And then what happened is about a year later, everyone still went to jail, and he was tortured and killed in jail. And to our knowledge, the reason is that the US government had a backdoor into Skype and some other bits of software that somehow got to the Iraqi government, and then the Iraqi government somehow gave it to the Syrian government and everyone. And then that combined with the metadata analysis basically made the VPNs pretty useless. And unfortunately, you know, I wake up every day and I have that, you know, just as Chelsea didn't want to have the blood of the Iraq war on her hands, I have the blood of my friends on my hands who I failed to deliver privacy-enhancing software to. So we at NIM, we're trying to make that better. We're trying to say, what can we do to build something that can actually resist nation-state level surveillance? And the question is how to do that. And it's pretty simple. It's how anonymity works is not well understood. We have a crowd of people here. If you want to be anonymous, you have to hide in a crowd. If you're by yourself, you're easily identifiable. The larger the crowd is that you're hiding among, the more anonymous you are, right? So if you're hiding a crowd of like 10 people, it's like kind of easy to figure out who you are. And if everyone has different color clothing, it's like even easier, or different hairstyles or whatever. If you're hiding in 1 million people, it's much harder. If everyone is hiding in 1 million people and they all kind of look the same, it's basically impossible, right? So that's like the key intuition. And then what we've seen though, and what we do is what VPNs, and unfortunately including Tor, don't do that. They don't really hide your traffic in a crowd. They shuffle it around. A VPN shovels it to someone else's server and shuffles it out. Tor shuffles it through a cool peer-to-peer network of a few servers, but they don't actually shuffle and combine and mix your packets up in a crowd. So you're not actually that anonymous. So the whole point of NIM and the NIM VPN, which Max and other people could, you know, happy to install on your phone if you want, or your laptop, is that we actually try to make your packets anonymous by mixing them in the largest crowd possible. And that general principle can apply to Ethereum, right? So, you know, if you wanted to make your Ethereum transactions private, if you made an Ethereum Pacific privacy network, and you only mix yourselves with other Ethereum people, there's a fair amount of Ethereum traffic, but it's not huge. You're still going to stand out, right? And so what you want to do is you want to mix your Ethereum traffic, your blockchain traffic, with a lot of different traffic, such as, for example, people just streaming YouTube, people sending Telegram messages, people sending emails, people have nothing to do with Ethereum. If you mix all of that together, you're much more anonymous. And this is the key insight I've been trying to explain to the Ethereum community for years, and no one's listening. And my last update from the Ethereum Foundation shows that they're also not listening, that they're trying to build their own Pacific Ethereum-only mixnets and MPC solutions. I think that's generally, I understand why. It's better than doing nothing, but it's not enough. And any government-level agency will be able to cut through that anonymity set. They'll be able to just cut through that technology and identify people like, you know, like a knife through some soft butter. And we're going to need to do better. So I do want people to really think, what is it that we can do to make Ethereum actually private, actually anonymous? And that might mean breaking outside our friendship circles, not just handing money to our friends to do some cool project here and there, but actually working with other projects, larger communities, the largest community possible, right? Getting as many people to be anonymous together is probably the only way that we can defend people like the Tornado Cash defendants from going down again. Because if, you know, there's serious pressure on Ethereum, and this pressure is not going to go up just because Trump got elected, right? OFAC, FinCEN, all the US government, you know, agencies will continue to monitor the Ethereum network very carefully, and if they believe anyone they don't like is using that network, if you happen to be in the US government shit list, they will go after you really hard with immense, as Chelsea put it, asymmetric power. So we're going to have to really up-level, and I'm really glad this community is here because I think this is the perfect time to do it, to really get outside of building, oh, I'm just going to build some Ethereum Pacific tech, because that's not going to work when you're up against the US government. That's not going to work when you're up against the Chinese government, or you're up against, like, definitely not the Thai government. We love the Thai government. But even if you're up against, like, you know, whatever, Microsoft Research, right? So I do think we can do it. And I'm really glad to be here, and I really just reach out for myself or anyone else from NIM while here, and we'll be happy to discuss. And Chelsea, you have any final thoughts? I think we've probably gone over.
Maybe I can ask one question to Chelsea, because cypherpunk movement has been created before WikiLeaks, before Snowden, before misinformation in socials. So it feels that it needs sort of revitalization, some sort of cultural upgrade. There was no Gen Z, there were no digital consumption at this scale. Like, what kind of new refreshment should be made to also make cypherpunk culture more fit into maybe, or applicable to the young people, for example?
Sure. I think that the individualist libertarian principles from the early cypherpunk moment, where it was like protecting yourself as an individual, were is a limitation. Because it's essentially like not every single individual has the same ability to protect themselves and to defend themselves. You can give them the tools and the ability to, but that doesn't mean that everybody else does. What I think is important is that we'd be able to have a sort of a principle of a sort of cypherpunk solidarity effort, where you're able to where through my own power I can increase the privacy of somebody else that I know through the sort of what Harry was alluding to about sort of mutual aid, so a sort of mutual aid for privacy, a mutual aid for individual security and protection. We can look out for each other, not just focus on whether or not I have my keys, but on whether or not I have the web of trust.
Oh, okay, cool. And what kind of final message you want to share to people who want to kind of explore cypherpunk journey, but at the same time try to ship tangible solutions like VPN to end people?
Yeah, this stuff is extremely important. It is life and death, and it is increasingly a very important matter for people everywhere. If you are in a nation that is stable and feels where you feel comfortable, I highly suggest that you look around at where the world is going and think about the risks that yourself and your neighbors may be at in the not too distant future. We live in not necessarily unprecedented times, but certainly we are in unstable and very a very unique time where we need to start thinking about how we're going to not just protect ourselves, but protect the people that we care about around us.
Thanks a lot, Chelsea, for being with us today. Thanks, Harry, for help. Please, round of applause.
So just final note, peer-to-peer is not anonymous. Okay, people need to stop thinking that. You can only be anonymous in a large crowd. Mixed nets are one way, DC nets, MPC, lots of different ways to do it. But let's really focus on that, and let's actually try to build the next generation of privacy tech here. Thanks.